Yeah, we're gonna push Biden to the left. Neera Tanden is Biden's latest middle finger to the left. Joe Biden has picked Neera Tanden, a fierce critic of Bernie Sanders and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, to head the Office of Management and Budget. The move is just the latest sign that Biden will govern from the center-right, offering nothing to the left. This is from Left Voice, and it's by Ezra Brain. Joe Biden, as part of his rollout of the coming administration, has named Neera Tanden to be his nominee to head the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. OMG. Tanden's nomination has provoked outrage from members of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, both because of her long history of right-wing stances, as well as her long-standing animosity toward Bernie Sanders and his supporters. This is just the latest sign that Biden is setting himself up to govern from center-right, and that he was able to successfully con the progressive wing of his party into supporting him, despite offering them nothing in return. Tanden is a lifelong politico whose career has been closely tied with the Clintons. She worked in Bill Clinton's White House, in Hillary Clinton's Senate office, and on both of her presidential campaigns. More recently, Tanden has been serving as the CEO of the Center for American Progress, CAP, a Democratic think tank that worked closely with the Obama administration. Center for American Progress claims to be a progressive organization, but even a cursory glance shows this to be false. CAP is, in fact, deeply in the pocket of capitalists. One of the clearest examples of this came earlier this year when the New York Times broke the story that CAP suppressed a report about NYPD surveillance of Muslims because the report was critical of Michael Bloomberg, who donated millions of dollars to the organization. This occurred in 2015 while Tanden was the CEO. Center for American Progress also has been criticized for hosting an event with Benjamin Netanyahu supporting Saudi Arabia and a lack of transparency about where their funding was coming from. While many of their donors remain anonymous, corporations such as Wells Fargo, Walmart, Northrop Grumman, Goldman Sachs, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, and health insurance advocacy group America's Health Insurance Plans, AHIP, all have donated in the past. In addition, CAP has received money from billionaires like George Soros and Bill Gates, as well as the United Arab Emirates and the Ford Foundation. This laundry list of capitalists and corporations who have been funding Tanden's political home gives lie to any claim that she has about being anything other than a corporate shill. As an example of this, she helped pass Obamacare and then turned around and accepted donations from AHIP, who spent $100 million to try and defeat it. The Office of Management and Budget is responsible for creating and implementing the president's budget, and it oversees all federal agencies to ensure that their policies are in line with the president's policy agenda. As the head of the OMB, Tanden will continue to be a servant of capital and an enemy of the working class. Indeed, as the head of Center for American Progress, she supported cuts to entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare, so it seems likely that those programs could come under attack from a Tanden-led OMB. This is me breaking in. She has repeatedly called Social Security and Medicare entitlement programs. If anything, she's even farther right than Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Back to the story. Tanden is especially controversial among the Sanders camp. Tanden is a sworn enemy of the progressive wing of the party and used CAP and its associated website, Think Progress, to attack Sanders during the primaries. This escalated to the point that Sanders put out a statement denouncing Tanden by name for maligning his staff and supporters and belittling progressive ideas. She has been very vocal on Twitter and in media appearances in denouncing the left, though she has recently deleted many of her old anti-Sanders tweets, ostensibly in the name of party unity. She's been deleting a lot of other tweets, too. The New Republic, writing about leaked emails from Tanden that came out in the Clinton campaign hacks of 2016, described her as an operator who, in spite of her professed deference to serious ideas, has actively blurred the lines between policy and politics, all to advance a single goal, electing Hillary Clinton. In pursuit of that goal, she has consistently prioritized politics over policy and frozen out dissenters who might otherwise have ideas of value to contribute to the Democratic agenda. That's probably the nicest thing you could say about her. The leaked emails, as the New Republic points out, reveal Tanden as an almost cartoonish version of an establishment political animal. She looks at every issue as a mechanism to either gain or consolidate power and influence. Outside of defending the establishment at all costs, she seems willing to take any position that benefits her. Her own words dovetail exactly with the sort of person who would both be the architect of the Affordable Care Act and take money from its fiercest opponents. It is no wonder, then, that she is now set to become a member of the Biden administration, another establishment politician whose only political objective is to protect the status quo. What Tanden's nomination shows more than anything is that Biden is an enemy of the working class and the left. This is not news, but it should be highlighted because we should not so quickly forget that a large section of the left called for support for Biden as the lesser evil. In many ways, Biden owes his victory to the ground game and popularity of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, who were able to hold Biden's coalition together, especially in Minnesota and Michigan. Thanks, squad. That was me, if you couldn't tell. No one was more influential in this process than Tanden's favorite targets, Bernie Sanders and the squad. But now that Biden has won, he is not only offering the progressives nothing in return, but also appointing people to key positions who are actively antagonistic towards progressive ideas. In addition, while the reformist left, such as the DSA and Jacobin magazine, may be up in arms about Tanden now, let us not forget that just a few weeks ago they were remaining very quiet on the question of the election and calling for support for Democrats in local races. The concept of pushing Biden to the left was trotted out by certain DSA members as if that strategy hadn't been tried and failed with every Democratic candidate of the last 50 years. Several important socialist leaders and academics actively whipped votes for Biden and now protest that he's setting up an austerity government. But when the next election rolls around, all of these sharp denunciations will go out the window, and once again, the reformist left will tell us to bite the bullet and vote for whatever neoliberal Democrat is on the ballot. Vote now, protest later will once again be the slogan. But we can't fall for it again. We can't beat Charlie Brown with the football for another 2, 4, 6, 8 years. Our climate won't be habitable for that long. Joe Biden nominated Neera Tanden to head the OMB because that's what Democrats do. They position themselves as the lesser evil during elections, and then as soon as the elections are over, they viciously attack the working class and oppressed. It's what Obama did, it's what Clinton did, and it's what Biden is doing, and it will be what the next Democrat does too. This is me talking. That's why I keep saying that we need to get out of the Democratic Party and we need to shun the progressive wing of the Democratic Party until they also leave the party. Whether or not their intentions are good, we need to abandon them until they abandon the DNC. This was on Katie Halper's show. Why Neera Tanden, Biden's new pick for a top economic role, has been called a terrible leader and impossible to trust by some of her former colleagues.
Welcome back. And any thoughts about Neera Tanden being named to Biden's cabinet?
Yeah, I'm sure you've been talking to other folks about the play-by-play and specific issues on which Neera Tanden's record speaks for itself, advocating for cuts to entitlements in 2010, arguing that Hillary Clinton shouldn't support a $15 minimum wage, actively antagonizing Senator Sanders during the campaign, both in 2016 and 2020, despite holding herself out as an impartial leader, the leader of an impartial organization in CAP, physically assaulting Bernie Sanders' campaign manager when he worked underneath her at CAP. And the list goes on and on and on.
Tanden punched him in the chest simply for questioning Clinton's past support for the invasion of Iraq. And then she said she pushed him.
But those of us who spend more time online than working for any of these institutions know that interpersonally, she also just happens to be one of the more unpleasant, unscrupulous, and unethical people online who has, not really shied away in the least from aligning herself with people who have displayed outright bigotry, anti-Semitism, and ableism, and a lot of other kinds of really disgusting behavior. She openly calls these people her friends and says happy birthday, friend, and has no reservations about her associations with them. So unlike Bernie Sanders, who was often critiqued for having Bernie bros amongst his ranks and was asked repeatedly to condemn and distance himself from them, which he did, Neera Tanden and anybody who aligns themselves with corporate Democrats never have any accountability about the hateful rhetoric, the doxing, and the true explicit bigotry that is displayed not just by random people who happen to support their politics online, but people who they self-describe as their friends. And it's really, if nothing else, a really pure demonstration of the contempt that the Biden administration has for the left.
It's good that you call racism bigotry. It's also good if you call classism bigotry, as Brianna does. Sneera Tanden is a bigot, make no mistake about it. She's a woman of color, and she's a bigot. And I maintain that if you're a classist bigot, you're also by default a racist bigot. I don't care what color you are. If, like all true leftists, you're worried about U.S. imperialism, Richard Medhurst certainly is and has been, then Sneera is a bad, bad choice.
If I'm not mistaken, these were leaked to The Intercept a few years ago, right?
So again, we're talking about the John Podesta WikiLeaked emails.
And Glenn, he wrote about this stuff.
Glenn Greenwald wrote about these leaked emails.
And this is the best one, this email, right? Look what she says here, Neera Tanden. We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. She's talking about Libya. Look at the subject line. Should Libya pay us back? We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. If we want to continue to engage in the world, gestures like having oil-rich countries partially pay us back doesn't seem crazy to me. Do we prefer cuts to Head Start or WIC or Medicaid? Because we live in deficit politics, and that's what is happening and will be happening even more.
Wow.
Wow. This bitch. Like, look how fucking shameless she is. And I want you to notice something. I don't know if many people notice this. The shit that she's saying here is so outrageous that not even a minute later, Faiz Shakir replies to her, and he's like, yo, you need to chill. Look at that. She sent this at 11:23, and Faiz answers her at 11:24. It's like, I don't think it's fair that we create our own domestic problems and then ask other nations to pay for it. No shit. You see the adverse incentive problem here, right? If we think we can make money off an incursion, we'll do it. That's a serious policy, messaging, moral problem for our foreign policy, I think. Yeah, that's way more politely than I would have put it. You know, I think Neera Tanden can go and fuck herself, right? If she thinks that Arabs are going to pay to be invaded. I mean, who the fuck do you think you are, you imperialist piece of shit? Fuck you. Who do you think you are? I mean, look at this arrogance, this villainous shit that she is writing in an email. Like, she has no shame. It's not even just she's thinking of it, which is bad enough. No, she's like seriously suggesting this.
Oh, Neera. Faiz Shakir. If we think we can make money off an incursion, we'll do it? That's a serious policy messaging moral problem for our foreign policy. You think? Personally, I think it sounds just like what Joe Biden would want. She's perfect.
So she says we have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. If we want to continue to engage in the world, gestures like having oil-rich countries, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, you just keep naming them, that let's make them pay. Who else says that? Besides Joe Biden's latest
bomb
pick.
the oil, take the oil. Bomb the oil, take the oil. Just take it, right? I've been saying that for 4 years, and they were saying, oh, that would be. In fact, Obama put some general on television saying, no, that wouldn't work. Why wouldn't it work? ISIS is making its money from the oil.
Neera and Trump, you sound like best pals. So if you didn't know it, Center for American Progress and Third Way are best buds. Chris Saliza, boo, tweeted, "When it comes to the popularity of ideas, voter turnout, and results, the energy is with the moderates." Third Way Matt. I've picked on the Third Way since the beginning of this show, and so if you've been watching me for a long time, you know that Third Way and Cap are the same. They're part of the evil Hollywood, Clinton, Obama, Biden cabal. So Warren Gunnels snaps back with, "The ideas Wall Street Democrats at Third Way have pushed: opposition to a $15 an hour federal minimum wage, cuts to Social Security and Medicare, calling them entitlements, Wall Street deregulation, job-killing trade deals, opposition to Medicare drug price negotiations." That's Neera Tanden right there. Now we'll let Matt Taibbi have the last word. With Tanden choice, Democrats stick it to Sanders voters. The appointment of a longtime anti-Sanders troll to the Biden government is an impressively petty end-zone dance by Democrats celebrating the crushing of their left flank. The Democratic Party is not known for its sense of humor, but news that Joe Biden will appoint longtime Center for American Progress chief Neera Tanden to his government qualifies as a rare, well-earned laugh line. Tanden is famous for two things: having a puddle of DNC talking points in place of a cerebrum and despising Bernie Sanders. She was a #resistance most visible anti-Sanders foil, spending awe-inspiring amounts of time on Twitter bludgeoning Sanders and his supporters as a deviant mob of Russian tools and covert horseshoe theory Trump lovers. She has, to put it gently, an ardent social media following. Every prominent media figure with even a vague connection to Sanders learned in recent years to expect mud-drenched pushback from waves of Neera trolls after any public comment crossing DNC narratives. No name in blue politics is more associated with seething opposition to Sanders than Tanden. Biden is making this person director of the Office of Management and Budget. Sanders is the ranking member and perhaps future chair of the Senate Budget Committee. Don't hold your breath on that one, Matt. Every time Bernie even thinks about doing committee business, he'll be looking up at Neera Tanden. For a party whose normal idea of humor is 10,000 consecutive jokes about Trump being gay with Putin, that's quite a creative fuck you. As friend and former Sanders aide David Sirota put it, "In my opinion, it is not a coincidence that they are putting Neera Tanden, the single biggest, most aggressive Bernie Sanders critic in the United States of America, specifically at OMB while Sanders is Senate Budget Committee ranking chair." The Democrats still have to reckon with Trumpism in both the short and long term, but the Sanders movement on their other flank has at least temporarily been routed as a serious oppositional force. The Democrats know this, which is part of the joke of the Tanden appointment. While the party's labors to oppose Trump have been incoherent at best, the campaign to kneecap Sanders has been, let's admit it, brilliant. The blue apparat has always despised Bernie and his various precursor movements far more than it hated Republicans, and for good reason. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of Clintonite hacks in cushy Washington sinecures who would have retained their spots in the event of a loss to Trump. A Sanders win would have put them all out of the politics business for a while. It was unsurprising to see the party mainstream marshalling all of what passes for its brainpower to devise a long game to crate-train Sanders, who in less than a year went from oppositional favorite to seize the Democratic nomination to obedient afterthought. In hindsight, the key blow against the Sanders movement was delivered way back on February 13th, 2016. Sanders at the time was making a primary race expected to be a blowout competitive, mostly via simple juxtaposition of Wall Street misbehavior and Hillary Clinton's amazing aptitude for wolfing down corporate speaking fees. In the lead up to the Iowa caucus, Sanders ran an ad blasting Goldman Sachs for its role in trading toxic mortgage securities and asked, "How does Wall Street get away with it?" Answer: millions in contributions and speaking fees. The problem? Our economy works for Wall Street because it's rigged by Wall Street. The Clinton campaign for weeks struggled to come up with an answer for why it was okay for her super PAC, the ironically named Priorities USA, to take the bulk of its money from Wall Street, or why Clinton and her husband in 15 years had racked up an incredible $153 million in speaking fees at an average of $210,795 per speech, including $600,000 from Goldman. The first effort at a defense was to blast Sanders for using what he called an artful smear, claiming he couldn't come up with a specific example of how all that special interest money had affected her. "If you've got something to say it directly," she said in a debate, adding that she objected to the idea that anyone who's ever taken donations or speaking fees from any interest group has to be bought. This argument worked for Sanders, though, as Clinton was essentially repeating that she was taking gobs of special interest money. She moved off the "I strenuously object on behalf of those who've collected massive speaking fees" defense soon enough and shifted to another, arguing on February 8, 2016, that Sanders too had taken some Wall Street money through the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. For obvious reasons, this argument that Sanders had been corrupted indirectly through her own party's campaign apparatus fell flat as well. The true eureka moment came in a speech in Henderson, Nevada in that second week of February. Clinton told supporters that, of course, hand on heart, she'd be more than happy to break up the banks if they deserve it. At the same time, she wondered what that would really accomplish. Hillary Clinton, progressive isn't about breaking up big banks. Oh no. Of course not. Would breaking up banks end racism? She asked the crowd. No, came the answer. Sexism? No. Discrimination against the LGBT community? No. Would punishing banks make people feel more welcoming to immigrants overnight, or fix problems with voting rights for people of color, the elderly, the young? No, 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 and no. None of this made sense, of course. Raising the minimum wage, curtailing carbon emissions, lowering student debt, curing cancer, securing world peace, or any of 1,000 other worthwhile things wouldn't have solved the parade of meta-problems Clinton listed. There was no logical reason to depict the two sets of things, economic and racial justice aims, as contradictory goals, but Clinton's "not everything is an economic theory" speech stuck, with the media most of all. From that point forward, everything Sanders said about inequality was spun by party messengers as half of a zero-sum equation that somehow punished disadvantaged groups on the other end. Fiendishly clever. The brilliant innovation was adopting the language of intersectionality to beat back the party's populist flank. In March of 2016, in the middle of a debate with Sanders in Flint, Michigan, the Clinton campaign posted a jargon-crammed chart depicting the intersectional challenges that we face, noting that real plans were needed. This was classic Clintonian politics, mastering the lexicon of social progressivism to mask a lunge rightward on economic questions. Ding, ding, ding. Skipping ahead, in truth, the schism within the party had nothing to do with any fictitious Sophie's choice between tackling racism or economic inequality, as if the two were mutually exclusive. The real issue was money. Sanders refused to take corporate donations. Clinton Democrats refused to unilaterally disarm and did take them. Elizabeth Warren, are you listening? This was the entire debate, and it wasn't complicated. Pundits, however, were able to muddy these waters pretty easily, in large part because they knew the intellectual weaknesses of left-leaning media audiences, as well as Sanders himself. Vosh the sheepdog, Sam the cedar, are you listening? You're trying to take advantage of intellectual weaknesses of left-leaning media audiences. You should admit that. You should ask your favorite independent pundits, why is it okay to vote for corporatists anyway? I'd say it's pretty clear that they're taking advantage of your intellectual weaknesses if you can be fooled with such stupid arguments. Skipping ahead again, it was the same with charges that he was a favorite of the Russians, another regular theme of Tanden. Rather than recognize from the start that the Russia issue was being used as a club against opposition voices across the spectrum, including the anti-war left, Sanders tiptoed around the question, often giving lip service to the most absurd Russiagate theories. He didn't show a hint of anger until a fresh dump of secret sources say Putin loves Bernie reports hit the news about 10 minutes before the Nevada caucus. Bernie at least saw through that one. I'll let you guess about one day before the Nevada caucuses, he quipped last February. The Washington Post? Good friends. Even in that case, though, Sanders couldn't take the next step. Instead of taking aim at the conniving bunt of reporters, DNC polls, and intelligence sources driving these McCarthy-style attacks, Sanders, after the Nevada incident, dutifully denounced the foreign menace. I unequivocally condemn such interference, he said, essentially conceding that Russia was helping his campaign. Just like Jeremy Corbyn, who looked weak when he dignified both the red-baiting claims that Russia was helping him and the breathless accusations of anti-Semitism cooked up as a last-ditch effort to delegitimize his coalition, Sanders helped shovel dirt on his own movement by failing to strike back in anger at these multitudinous bogus propaganda campaigns. Now the Democrats have the White House back, and it's already pretty clear that Sanders voters are going to be rewarded for this timidity with 4 years of the high hat. How bad is it? Appointments like Janet Yellen, John Kerry, and yes, even Tanden are being lauded as picks likely to be welcomed by progressives. The rest of Biden's team feels like absolute continuity with the last 3 decades of Wall Street-friendly Democratic politics, with the appointment of BlackRock veteran Brian Deese to serve as chief economic advisor being just one example. The difference between conventional Democrats and the Sanders movement is that Democrats never allowed themselves to view Sanders and his followers as anything but threats that needed squashing. They were never tempted, even for a moment, to take the idea of a Sanders presidency seriously. Sanders was loyal in the end to the party that made a mission of destroying him, and now gets Neera Tanden up the keister as the first installment in what is sure to be a long program of repayment for the sin of running without permission. Welcome to the eternal law of American politics, where no crime is punished more harshly than being a good loser.